Great. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming today, and I hope you're enjoying the Aero conference so far. Excuse me. This is the session on the good news science of screen time. And I didn't really mention it, but we're going to talk about children's screen time today. So let's get started. I'm just going to, there. So this is me. I'm Judy Arnall. I am a family life educator. I am actually a certified child development person and an education consultant. And I have been taking a really amazing interest in the brain and everything it does. I teach the course, The Growing Brain from 0 to 3 org. And I've also been certified in the Brain Story. If some of you have never heard of the Brain Story, it is a course free online. It's about 20 to 30 hours. You get a certificate, and it tells you all about the brain, child development in the brain, addictions, mental health in the brain, and it is put together. Most of the content of that course is from 49 neuroscientists from across North America and the world who got together in about 5 symposiums and shared what they knew about the brain and addictions and everything else. So it's a fabulous course, highly recommend it. I'm a realist. So in my professional work, I talk about screen time limits based on government and medical recommendations, but I'm a realist. I'm a mom of 5 children who are all avid gamers. Not so much on social media, but they gamed a lot. And my whole philosophy is non-punitive parenting, non-punitive education. So it's been an interesting fit on how I handle screen time and gaming time with my kids without punishments, without taking away devices, and without shutting down what they're doing. I've written 4 books. Anyways, these are my gang. And what I didn't really talk about is I'm going to present for about 40 minutes, and I would like to ask you to hold your questions till the end, and then I can have a free for all. So please, if you wouldn't mind just muting your mics during the presentation, and then we will take questions after. So my books I've written are on how parents can get a grip, handling anger and stress. I've written a book, which is an international bestseller, Discipline Without Punishment. It's called Discipline Without Distress, and it's all about solving parenting challenges without taking away cell phones, issuing consequences, spanking, all those lovely things. Then I put out a DVD on handling screen time. And I also did a little journal book, which is cute. And my recent books are attachment parenting tips. So it's just a whole bunch of tips and not a lot of parenting theory. And most recent is the book Unschooling to University on Self-Directed Education. So today's information is coming from chapter 16 down there on brain basics, and also chapter 18, where I do a whole section on the benefits of video games. So if you have naysayers in your family and you like this presentation, feel free to gift them a copy. I wrote the book because I'm the parent of 5 unschooled children. They unschooled most of their years until high school, and then they did a more self-directed high school program in order to go on to post-secondary. And when they were going on to post-secondary, a lot of their friends went on to post-secondary colleges, universities, tech, art schools. And when I noticed this, I thought, okay, this information has got to get out there. We have to share this. So I surveyed these 30 friends and put together the results in the book Unschooling to University, and talked about how they got in, what they did. Did they go to preschool? What did they do for unschooling? And the interesting part about the 30 kids is they were all unschooled anywhere from 3 to their whole 12 years of education. They were all accepted. That was the criteria. And so far, 22 have already graduated. 2 have gone on to master's levels. And of the 30, we had 10 students in STEM, 4 engineers, 10 students in humanities, and 10 students in the arts. So a wide range of interests and abilities there. Okay, so I have a lot of slides here, so I'm just going to go over a few things. I founded Unschooling Canada.ca about 6 years ago, so we have a lot of information on the website there. And I started a group called Unschooling STEM on Facebook. Feel free to join. As I have 4 children who are in STEM careers or on a STEM pathway, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about how do you facilitate children's totally natural interests in STEM? Show me a kid that's not interested in how science works or math, and how can we further facilitate that love of learning in those areas? And here's my blog, unschoolingtouniversity.com. There's things that are not in the book, more personal stories that I have to be very careful of what I share about my children, but on a blog, I feel like I can share a bit more than in a published book. Okay, so most of this information I'm presenting today comes from, oh dear, I just turned my phone off. I'm so sorry. Sorry. Most of the information today comes from the brain story and our health region. So you know. Okay, so let's get started. I will just turn this off here. So let's talk about technology, addiction, and parenting. And while I'm talking here, I am going to turn my video off. Well, maybe I won't. I'll just leave it on there. What the heck? Okay, we have a real bias in our society against screen time. I remember one year our local library ran a summer reading program, and they asked kids to read a certain number of books and they would get prizes. And the prizes were iPads, laptops, and they faced a huge, overwhelming opposition from parents saying, why are you encouraging screen time in order to get kids to read books? And it came out that literacy, it doesn't matter if it's on a screen or in a book. Literacy is literacy. And the books are doing very well. I have, as a publisher, I have lots of research from various places that show that reading is on the rise, books are on the rise, both e-books, both paper books. It's not going away, it's increasing. So children are definitely reading. So screen time is really anything with a screen that's electronic. Let's define that right there. So it can encompass a lot of things, more things that we're familiar with. And technology, is it good or bad? It's neither. Technology is technology. How each individual person uses it may be good for them, may be not so good for them, but really they're the person who has to decide how much screen time is too much. It was about a couple years ago where psychologists, psychiatrists, the medical community were deciding whether to put screen addiction in the DSM-5. And they didn't, they left it out because they couldn't define the parameters of what would make it addicting, what would make it a disorder, and they couldn't narrow down how to treat it. So without those, they decided to leave it out of the DSM. Whether it makes it into the next one, we still don't know. It's still too soon. So what we as parents and teachers have to look at is just be aware, be conscious of what consumption our children are doing and look at it in terms of the individual child, in terms of what the content is they're looking at and the context. Is there a caring adult there to explain things or not? Or do we just let them loose on iPad and or YouTube and see where they end up? So those are things we have to be conscious about. Right now, though, because this technology is still so new, we've had smartphones since 2007, so that's really only 14 years. We've had iPads since 2010, which is 11 years only. We do not have clear evidence-based long-term studies of the effect of technology on older children. We do have some good studies on the effect on younger children who are still learning to speak, but older children, none. So in the absence of that, it's best recommendation, best practices are moderation. Absolutely. So let's look at brain basics. I often hear from parents, oh, I have to limit screen time because otherwise my children will become addicts. And for anyone who's homeschooled, and especially unschoolers, our children have many hours of the day to fill. And a lot of children want to fill that with screen time. And there is a whole range of parents and philosophies and what families do. And it's really on a continuum. At one end of the continuum are the limiters, and they have definite rules, things like, okay, 1 hour screen time a day. And then on the other end of the continuum, there are the definite unlimiters, where fill your boots. I would have to say, personally, I was on the unlimiting end of the continuum. Did I worry? Absolutely. Most parents do worry. Did that stop me? No. Because like most parents, I kind of liked the peace and quiet when they were on screens. I kind of liked being able to get some things done. I kind of liked having some me time. And I kind of liked believing that they were educational. So I'll just be honest with you. We had kids that spent a lot of screen time. One child, he was 7 years old and spending about 12 hours a day on screens. Please don't tell anybody. It's so bad. But I also have the benefit of seeing my kids grow and develop and learn from screens and reach that stage of brain development when they were able to put screens on hold, especially when a new game came out, and they put them on hold and said, I have to study this course for the next 4 months. I'm not going to play this game. And I remember my kids saying to me, I would say to the kids, why does Nintendo or these game people release their new releases during exam time? And they would say to me, well, why does a school schedule exam during game release time? So it's all a matter of how you look at it. So let's look at the brain. Is it addiction or not? Keep in mind that society worried, when books came out in the late 1800s, they worried that books would replace conversations that happened in the parlor. And then when TV came out in the 50s, we worried that TV would replace books and reading. And then when gaming came out in the 90s, we worried that gaming would replace books and conversation. And we know it doesn't. We know people still need people. We still interact with each other. We still converse, but in different ways and formats. This was a screenshot or a picture I took of a group of 20-somethings in a pub, and they were sitting there with their beer playing cards. And I thought, whoa, they're not on their phones. That's kind of cool. 5 minutes later, one person takes out their phone, and then everybody takes out the phone, and they do phone time for 5 minutes, and then they start putting them away and back to interaction again. And that's probably our new socialization. So let's look at addiction. There are two types. There's process addictions and substance addictions. So my question to you is, addiction caused by lack of willpower or by brain impairment? Okay, if you said brain impairment, you're correct. It is brain impairment. So excessive screen time does not cause addiction. I say this over and over and over to parents. It does not. There's a difference between addiction and habits. Now, that's not to say social media and gaming does not have hooks in them to keep people and children using them. Absolutely. They are compelling, and they make it compelling in many, many tiny little ways. One of my sons did a report on this for university, and if you've ever watched the movie, The Social Dilemma, that whole movie is about the embedded things that the manufacturers put in to keep our eyeballs on the screen. But okay, so it's a bad habit. You can change habits anywhere in 3 to 21 days. Absolutely, that's easy to do. Addictions are different than habits. Addictions, people can't stop. And I want to make it clear that children's lack of self-control is a developmental stage. It's not to be confused with addiction or brain impairment. Not at all. Children to a certain age do not have a lot of self-control, but when they do, then they're more able to put those controls on and put the games on hold in order to get on with life. Until they have that level of development in their brains, they need us caring adults to help them maintain moderation. So, brain impairment, in which addiction is a symptom, is caused by toxic stress and ACEs. ACEs are an acronym for adverse childhood experiences, things that children experience before the age of 18 that cause toxic stress, cause chemical reactions in the brain and the body, and can cause addiction as a side effect. So the brain develops from the bottom to the top and from the back of the brain to the front of the brain. So this prefrontal cortex is the last part of the brain to develop. First part of the brain to develop is the bottom brain functions, the cerebellum, the brain stem, and the occipital lobe here. But the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland are involved in a process called the HPA axis. And when a child is under stress, say toxic stress, what happens is the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland work together with the adrenal gland, that's the HPA, to produce cortisol and adrenaline, which is the stress hormones in response to that toxic stress. That's a good thing when that child needs to kick into action. It's a bad thing when it happens on a daily basis and it's unsupported by adults. That is what we call toxic stress. What that does is it inhibits the release of cortisol, inhibits connections between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. And that is where you get impaired brain function. The most common part of impairment is addictions. It's lack of self-control and restraint. It's not to mention an increase in a lot of risks of other health problems. So I kind of said that cortisol puts the connections between the amygdala and the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex on high alert. And the prefrontal cortex is where all those late teenage, early adult reasoning, decision-making, risk planning, abstract thinking happens. Now, do people have a hereditary gene for addiction? Yes. Addictions can run in the family. Genes are, it's kind of like this house in the red Legos. Genes are embedded in our DNA, but whether they're expressed or not or activated depends on our individual makeup, and we don't know yet what activates particular genes. The best protection against that is not having toxic stress and having supportive adults around. So when I talk about stress, I talk about there's positive stress, which is good stress. It's motivational, builds resiliency. For example, the talk I'm giving today is stressful, but it's positive stress. It motivates me to prepare. And it builds resiliency. When I'm done, I go, yay, I did it. And that's the same thing for our children. Tolerable stress is yucky stress, it's bad stress, but it subsides and it's usually buffered by caring people, so it doesn't turn into toxic stress. Toxic stress is prolonged stress, unpredictable, and not buffered by caring people. And that is what children need. They need caring adults to buffer that toxic stress, and then it becomes tolerable stress. And stress elevates the cortisol and adrenaline. And like I said, in spurts, it's fine, but on long-term basis, not good, not good. So here are the 10 addictions. Substance addictions are things like alcohol, tobacco, drugs, coffee, food. Process are shopping, gambling, sex, work, internet gaming, and exercise. Some of these are a little easier to handle than others. So if you're not familiar what ACEs are adverse childhood experiences. Most of us grow up with one of these. This is what I call my parenting no-no list. It doesn't matter if you're an attachment parent, a free-range parent, a helicopter parent, a snowplow parent, whatever other names we have, maybe a more authoritarian parent. Doesn't matter. This list is a list of the 10 parenting no-nos. This list. So, but like I said, most children grow up with one of these and they're fine, no brain impairment. Once a child grows up with 3 of these, it increases the risk of brain impairment. And about 15% of the population have these or have grown up with these before age 18. So let's say you take a child who's had maybe one parent who's mentally ill, doesn't have it under control, and then the other parent drinks to handle the mental illness and the family dynamics. So there's 2 ACEs right there. And then maybe a little bit, parents are under stress, so they're always coming down on the children. That could be emotional abuse. There's 3 ACEs right there that are all interacting at the same time. That could push a child into greater risk of brain impairment because of those 3 ACEs. Okay, so, but remember, adult support changes toxic stress to tolerable stress. So that's what children need. So is screen time an addiction? Like I said, we do not have enough research, and best practices are to err on the side of caution. We kind of know it's closest in nature to gambling, but the best practices are moderation and life balance. Okay, screens are compelling, but they're not addiction for most people. And in nurturing families with low ACEs, addictions are rare, no matter how much screen time children have, no matter how much. Okay, well, what we can do is model healthy screen use. Parents matter more than screens to children. So we help our children develop those internal controls that are going to come naturally if we model them ourselves and we allow them to come. They really will come. I'm not going to talk much about developmental stages in this, but I do want to just say, I want to address this slide. This is the development of self-control. So this is from the Brain Story course, and self-control is a part of executive function. So it's the child's ability to focus, and filter distractions, child's ability to use working memory, to have self-control, and to have decision-making and flexibility. So you can see here, there's a big leap from age 3 to 6. And this is why most children don't start school until age 6, because they need a certain level of self-control to maybe sit in circle time, not bug their little friend next to them, to stay on task, those kinds of self-control skills. But here, you'll also notice they take another big leap from 13 to 25. And among us unschoolers, we've noticed that around age 17, right here, see, right before that big leap, age 17, our children are very well developed to plan for the future, to buckle down and maybe work on some career goals or some qualifications to get them into post-secondary. They're willing to jump through hoops that they may not have done years later. And that's pretty good because it develops naturally in every brain, every child. We just have to wait for it. So if you tell your 8-year-old right here, that's enough screen time for today, get off screens, you're going to get pushback. They're going to whine and complain and stomp their feet and cry because that's a natural developmental stage. Not a discipline issue, that's a development issue. They're going to do it. And your job is to say, I feel bad that we have to put the screens away, but we have to go see the dentist. So let's get going. What can I help you do to get ready? That's parenting. Absolutely. But by the time your child's 17, they're going to make those choices themselves and they affect themselves. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. So when I worried about my 5 gamers, I noticed around age 16, 17, they could manage their competing interests, game time, studying on their own. And I didn't have to intervene because it was a natural development. Okay, let's talk about, I do want to talk a little bit about the little people. There is quite a lot of research right now because they're younger and we have lots more studies, is the effect of screen times on young brains. So under age 5, it does affect language development. And it's not so much the screens themselves, it's what we do. We do not talk to our children when they're that young, and that's where they learn language. Why do they need language? Because language is the key to social and emotional control. A little 2-year-old doesn't have the words to say, I want that toy. So what do they use? They use body language. They grab that toy. But with language, as they get to 4, 5, they start using the words and they say, I want that toy, please. I want to turn instead of grabbing it. And that does include a measure of self-control, but it also includes language. Language helps in social development. Nobody likes a grabby kid, but everybody likes a kid who says, I want a chance with that toy, please. So what do we have to do? We have to talk to our children. We have to read to them. We have to sing to them. We have to talk to them. And we can't leave them on screens nonstop because they don't learn language from screens. They learn language from human faces. They learn our tone, our intonation, our vocabulary, our articulation. And they learn language from us. So just like this doctor's office, everybody's on a screen here. The preschooler, the toddler, the mom, 2 other patients. Silent. They're raising the silent generation. We need to engage with our kids. And kids, when they want to engage with parents, they pester them, they nag them. I remember I was working on a report and my son really wanted my attention. He was about 7 and he came up to me and he took his hands and he grabbed me like this and he said, Mom, I want to talk to you. And that was my wake-up call that there are times your kids want you and need you. You need to give them your full attention. And that's part of modeling when it's time for screen time, when it's not. So there is lots of good studies, especially from under age 5, that language development. And the screen time recommendations from the Canadian Pediatric Society that came out in May of 2017 were no screen time under age 2. The American Academy of Pediatrics came out with their ruling in 2015. They were a little more lenient. They said 20 minutes a day with parents, and okay with video chat with relatives. But many parents exceed that. Absolutely, they do. So just so you know. Okay, so we have to start interacting with our kids. Absolutely. So I just wanted to point that out. Oh, I have this nice little video here that kind of shows you how children learn. So these are brain cells. This brain cell is going to send a neurotransmitter down the axon of this to the dendrite to the neighboring brain cell here. And it's going to, here's a little gap, which we call the synapse, and the neurotransmitter is going to come across that. And that is learning in action. And that happens whether a child is working on a math workbook or playing a video game. So learning happens no matter what. There's no difference in brain chemicals. Watch this. It's going to play. Okay, it's not going to play. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know why that's working. So some things, if you want to get kids off screens and you're waiting, so you're waiting at a restaurant, you're waiting for an airplane, whatever. I found this really helpful. This was a little lunch bag and I filled it with hands-on things to do for school-age children. So from age about 2 on up, you have to be careful about choking for the little ones, but I put in there a little bouncy ball, Play-Doh, scissors, tape, flashlight, pipe cleaners, markers, paper, and a deck of cards. And that will keep kids busy during waiting times. It helps their fine motor skills, their eyesight skills. It helps them do something that is learning, which is practical, creative, and keeps them busy. Now, for school-age children, the old recommendations from the Academy of Pediatrics, American Academy of Pediatrics, and the Canadian Pediatric Society were no more than 2 hours a day of screen time for school-age children. And the new recommendations are they don't put a time limit on anymore because schools are so much using screens too. So the new recommendations are just have a balance between screen time and other time. Recommended physical activity is 30 minutes a day, though, for school-age children, and 3 hours of active play for preschoolers. This is my gang. On one Sunday, I said, that's enough. You're on screens enough. Go outside and play. And of course, it's quiet and every parent's walking around thinking, when it's quiet, they're up to something. So I went outside and they're playing Wii, Nintendo Wii, through an inch of glass patio windows. And they made it work. So they're sneaky, those kids. They can do things. Okay, now, if you want to minimize screen time, how can you do it? Best way to do it, I found, remember, I'm non-punitive. Set limits with your kids, not at your kids. So make it a family gathering and say, okay, what are we going to do? We need less screen time in our family, and that includes mom and dad too. But what are we going to do? So you want to problem solve it. You want to sit down with them and say, what do you think you want for screen time? And here's what I need for screen time. There's other ways I know parents who hand out tickets. So they give their kids 20 tickets a week, 1 ticket per hour, and let the kids choose if they want to spend all the tickets in a marathon day, or, maybe they save them up for a new game coming out, right? So that could be. I found best too is contracts. So there is a sample of a contract at professionalparenting.ca under the articles tab. You can go there and print off this contract that I'm going to show you now. This is our contract for family health and safety. This is what our children agree to and sign. So basically they say, I always agree to ask you for help, advice, blah, blah, anything I can't handle, and never to meet strangers in person without my knowledge. And then the parent says, I agree to discuss and solve any problems. I agree to never confiscate your cell phone, TV, computer, blah, 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 if we follow this contract agreement. And I agree to abide by the same health and safety rules we have as a family, because you don't want to be a hypocrite. Excuse me. And then our mutual agreements are tech-free zones will be meal times, church, socializing with relatives, and when visitors drop by. All electronics will be turned off 1 hour before bedtime, just because there are good research studies that show that adrenaline does keep teenagers awake. Adrenaline from game time or something disturbing on social media. Everyone gets enough physical exercise every day, and we have tried to have the value in our family of giving attention to people takes precedence over attention to electronics. And then you can add more or take away some things that don't fit your family, add things that do. But you have good success with this if it's agreed to by children and parents and everyone in the family. If they don't agree to some of these, work it out, problem solve it, so it does work for everybody. Because, social media and internet's a part of life. It really is. The other thing too is you have the most power to instill limits before the power button's turned on. So make this discussion before you're in the heat of the moment. Nothing gets solved when everyone's angry or upset over or frustrated. Okay, I'm not going to talk about this. Okay, I want to talk about benefits. So I often get the question, what if they play video games all day, especially from homeschoolers and unschoolers? So again, keep in mind there's no toxic stress from ACEs. If there's none of those in the family, your children will not develop addictions to screens, or usually no addictions. Keep up rich language and conversations. Have times that you do talk to your children. Have tech-free times, exercise, meal times, healthy sleep hygiene practices. But keep in mind, esports is a global billion-dollar revenue industry that needs STEM, children with STEM education. And video gaming gives skills that lead to STEM careers in programming, engineering, and cybersecurity. We have to acknowledge what a big part of our life gaming is. And there are many career pathways in the gaming industry. One of my children, the one I worried about the most in terms of was they addicted, is now working for a major game manufacturer. Yay, it paid off. So, and all games teach STEM skills: problem solving, creativity, innovation, coding, math. All those are skills learned from playing video games. Games build executive function skills, so self-control, attention, focus, planning, organizing, developing patience, critical thinking, and emotion management. When children are frustrated by a game, having the self-control to not throw their game controller across the room or the screen, but having the ability to walk away and blow off steam, maybe going for a walk. Those are good executive function skills. Video games teach coding. There's lots of great opportunities out there. Steam Workshops is community of game modders. This is creativity, it's coding, it's scripting, building. These are very, very good skills. This is my son's birthday party. We had a Minecraft party. Actually, when we homeschooled, we had regular meetups at usually Friday afternoons where the gang of kids would come over. We'd open it up to anyone who wants to come over to our house and video game or code or anything. Bring your laptop. The parents would bring snacks. So it'd be a real social event. And my kids learned so much from the other peers. They learned how to do C++ and JavaScript and things like that. Group video games build people skills. So empathy, competence, connection, autonomy, teamwork. Those are big things that are taught in schools. And they can be taught just the same by playing video games, especially where kids have to form groups. So my 5 kids are a group in various games, PUBG, what's the one they're playing now? Apex Legends, I don't know, but it's really fun to watch them. They're all together in the living room and they work together as a team. It's amazing, the teamwork and communication. Occasionally there's conflict resolution, but they learn those skills too. But age appropriateness is key. Let's talk about girls. Why are girls not in gaming? Is it nurture and nature? Is it nature, which is biology, or is it socialization, which is nurture? A lot of the research shows it is socialization, because girls can play video games just as well as boys, but the environment may not be as conducive to that, or they feel the safety effect. If you look at the gaming aisle, if you're buying games in Toys R Us or a toy store, you'll see a lot of the games geared to girls. They're in the pink boxes with the sparkles, kind of like the Halo game here. And they focus on girls decorating or caring for pets and things. And yet the boy games, the games that are in the boy section, tend to not be pink. They're red or black. They're the action games that teach boys how to do all those great executive function skills: critically think, problem solve, work under pressure. And you can see it. It is socialization. The pink games are for the girls, the red and black for the boys. And really, we need girls to play the boy games. We need the boys to play the girl games, because our boys also become nurturers and caregivers, and our girls need critical thinking and problem solving too. So instead of asking how to get your boys off the computer, ask how to get your girls on there. Maybe we need more pink. And if you look at games that promote STEM, if you look at any advertisement for STEM, look at it critically. It's usually the boys doing it and the girls are watching. This is advertising STEM classes. There are 6 boys here and 1 girl. And what does that tell the girls? You can't be what you can't see. This is my daughter building her own gaming computer. And we have never had those gender divisions in our family. And we gave our boys the dolls, we gave our girls the first-person shooter games. So get your girls on gaming, because there's a lot of benefits out there in STEM, in future careers. Okay, we're going to quickly look at benefits of the internet, social media, and gaming. Obviously, everybody knows the benefits of the internet, as an information source, but it keeps families together too. When grandma in England can watch her grandson graduate across an ocean, it's just wonderful in that. And we've definitely experienced this in the last 18 months, is how much we can connect with families over screens where distance keeps us apart. The other benefit is anonymity. So girls tend to go on games and choose a male character so they don't get harassed. Anonymity is really great, but it also depends on how it's used. It can also be used for bullying, which is not so great. I think I talked a lot about this already. This is coming from the chapter 18 of the book. So developing critical analytical thinking, problem-solving skills, literacy gets kids reading. Games have a lot of reading, and if they don't, they have game manuals or how-tos that generally are at a grade 11 reading level. So if your kids are just reading game manuals, that's great. It also develops pattern recognition, which is good for math operations. It's a great medium for creativity. So my kids would play games, but then they would do these art projects with the games. And it builds knowledge and skills. Some video games like Spore, I'm going back in time here. What was that? Age of Empires. My kids learned all about Romans and knights and biology and so many things through video games. And they were very creative. They made these little Kirby's. They made stories. Even before they could write, they would make the picture of the story, and I would write down the text of the story to help them. So lots of creativity. Minecraft cakes. We made costumes, art. Their play, they would incorporate video games in their play, their artwork, costumes, comic fest, more comic fest, and art. So, and memes. It's so good. So very creativity. Life skill benefits. It helps kids zone out, relax. If they've been stressed, sometimes gaming is just relaxing. It teaches delayed gratification. If you have a child who has ADHD, gaming really helps teach that focusing. And it builds kids' confidence and self-esteem. Maybe they're not a brain at school. Maybe they don't excel at art. But if they're, top level in gaming, that does build their confidence. And I'm just going to show you an example of this is our living room. With 5 gamers in the family, I wanted our children not in their bedrooms alone. I wanted them in a central place. So we gave up our living room, made it into a gaming room so that they all could chat with each other, play games together, connect. But there are times they do their homework on their computer. And then I have a couch in here where I sit and read, and I can actually see how wonderfully educational games are. If you're doubting it, spend some time with your kids, sit with them, and watch, see what they learn. It's amazing. So if you want more research and resources, there's a lot of good resources out there. But I would really encourage you to take the brain course from the Palix Foundation. Here is, if you just Google brain story course, you can find it pretty well. Okay, I hope this was helpful to you. And I would be super happy to open it up to questions. So I think this is meeting format. So if you want to, so the question is, are some games more closer to gambling than others? I do want to address this because some games have, like you say, scare box or loot boxes or things. They're elements of games that children have to pay for and hopefully open up and get the desired whatever they want that helps them progress in the games. Those can be absolutely close to gambling. So I think until it gets worse and more people get upset about those kinds of things embedded. I mean, when we had children's television, it was a universal standard across all stations that children's programming would be ad-free. And we don't have the same thing in games. So it's more parents' ability. You have to decide which games your kids are going to play because those are present in more mature games. The game rating system, it wouldn't be present in games such as those games designated for everyone or family or young children. But once you reach the teen years, you'll find those things in games. And they're a pitfall. They are. Don't hand over your credit card to your child because you'll end up with $1,000 bill. And definitely have that talk with them on why you're concerned that those could be addicting. But there's not much we can do about it right now. And they are in certain games, and the kids know they're there. So when I said that gaming is closest to gambling, that is from a lot of the research coming out from the Kaiser Foundation, and many health organizations think that gambling is closest, or gaming is closest to gambling, but there are still some differences there. So they haven't, that's why it's not in the DSM-5 yet, or the next DSM version. So yeah, talk about those gambling elements in games like loot boxes with your kids and try and mitigate it. The comment in the chat box, also children with art education needed in e-gaming. Absolutely, I missed that, but yes, the art, and not just the art, but language too, right? A lot of games have need grammarians and editors and translators. So absolutely, children in arts and humanities can go in and work in the gaming industry too. So very much needed careers. Yes. So when schools do have tech-free times, I think like that is good practices, is that there are times that it may be hard to put away screens, but there are times it's necessary. For a while there, the only time I saw anybody not with screens was at the swimming pool. Where they couldn't bring their phones in there. But I think it's good practices to have that time. We tell parents, put your phone in the trunk if you cannot stop yourself looking at your phone during red lights or while driving. Lock it in the trunk, and it makes it easier. And the more you do it, 21 days, it creates a habit. My question for schools, though, is if some schools ban phones for non-essential use. I have to define what's non-essential use. I know with my habits, when I read a magazine, a paper magazine, because I love paper, I read a book, I have my phone right by me because I want to look things up. If I read a newspaper and the headline mentions some person, I want to Google them. I want to find out more about them than the article gives me. So to another person, that may be non-essential use. To me, that is essential for my learning because it just opens things up to my learning. I know in our local schools, the curriculum goes a mile wide and an inch deep. And one of the reasons we homeschool, unschool is because we want to go an inch wide and a mile deep according to interests. And in order to do that, we need devices. We need to look things up wherever our interests take us, rather than just what's in front of us. So it's an interesting dilemma that a lot of schools are trying to figure out. And especially in the last 18 months, the screen use, because everything moved online. I know with my kids in university, the screen use, the universities were dealing with cheating, with, copy pasting from other things. So it does present a dilemma for schools, and one that each school needs to develop policies about.
And for sure.
Yeah.
I was just going to say thank you, Greg, for clarifying. It was, he's right. Henry was talking about the fact that they had voted to limit the entertainment use of screens during that time. So coming back to what you're saying about essential and non-essential, I guess they would, as a community, be comfortable with somebody using it in the way you described to look up information as you're reading, for example.
Yeah, but even as an unschooler, I mean, everything's educational. Even Call of Duty is educational
Yeah,
in
interesting.
some way.
Yeah, for sure.
And who's to decide that this is educational, this is non-educational, right? So yeah, but schools have the right to decide that, and then parents and children have the right to decide if they're going to go there or not. So
well, I think in this case it was the whole student body, like
yeah.
that's the way Summerhill works, right? So everybody had decided it together, but it was just interesting to hear that.
And that's great. I love that democratic aspect about it. Like, let's all vote, because that's the purpose of a family screen time contract too, is it has to work for everybody. Yeah. Derek says, at my school, I need at least one student with Google up all the time. Better if they all have it. Incredibly useful for them to pursue information no one knows. The second one person has a question or curiosity. Yeah, that's great. Another comment is, I've been unschooling for 4 years, but I still need assurance now and then on the screen time debate. Yes, I hear you. I'm okay with it now. I feel vindicated that my kids spent so much time on screens because, they all have paying jobs. Well, the older ones have paying jobs. They know when they can work and when they can't, and they call it at 11 o'clock. They say, okay, I'm done this game. I have to go to bed. I got to work in the morning. So when you see that, it makes you feel good that, kids do develop that self-control developmentally eventually. Okay, any other questions? We've got about 5 minutes left.
When you see a child staying up all night playing video games or watching YouTube, is it that they want to be on the screen, or is it that the toxic stress has raised their cortisol levels and they can't sleep because of the cortisol?
It could
Although
be.
if we're talking about cortisol, you got to put the blue light block on the phones at night, otherwise they won't let you sleep because of the cortisol problem again.
Yeah.
You recommend blue light block? Can you hear me?
Yes. It's not so much, well, it's the light on screens, right? But cell phone manufacturers have gotten around that a bit. But what keeps kids awake is the adrenaline. I mean, when you're really, in a game like PUBG or Fortnite, you are on high alert. But it's although cortisol is being released because you're under stress, it's a positive stress. It's not really a negative toxic stress. So it's okay. It does subside, but adrenaline is what keeps us awake. If you look at when you're angry, you can't sleep. You're angry. You have adrenaline from that anger, and until you calm down, and your parasympathetic nervous system is like, let's calm down, then you can go to sleep. That's kind of why they say, you should allow 1 to 2 hours between putting away screens and bedtime. And that's kind of the reason why I do not check my email past 5 o'clock, because if I read something that ticks me off or I'm worried about, it keeps my adrenaline up and then I don't sleep well. So we do need good practices like that of when to protect our sleep time, but also get those things done. A question is, sounds like self-regulation shouldn't be expected from children below 6. Absolutely. So and this is what I teach in parenting too, in my parenting books, I have really good charts of child development so that parents know, they have that expectation that, they can't say to their child, put that down and do this, and the child's going to listen. They won't listen. About 60% of the time below age 6, Children are going to do what they want to do. They're not going to listen to what you tell them to do. 40% of the time, they do listen, but that's not a discipline issue. That's a development issue. And it is very much what we're trying to get out there in parenting, is that it's all a matter of brain development and maturation. It's not your child being bad. Great. Okay. Anybody else? Any last questions before we? Yes, it does come naturally after the age of 6. So from age 6 to 12, I didn't really talk about this, but going back to the brain, I don't know if I can show you this, but yeah. Okay, so the prefrontal cortex, oh, here's my brain. Here we go. The prefrontal cortex is here, right? There's a brain stem, there's the back of the brain, but this whole, not the very front of the brain, but this part of the brain, the frontal cortex, is what's very much developing from age 6 to the teen years. And this is where kids are starting to get a lot better self-control. Now, a 12-year-old has more self-control than an 8-year-old who has more than a 6-year-old. And that's why parents have to nag children to do things until about age 13. By age 13, you can remind your teens, and they should have that ability and that working memory to think, oh yeah, I promised to take out the garbage. I better do that. So, but until then, we have to parent hands-on. But it does come naturally. You can't speed it up. You can't slow it down. It's just natural brain development. And it happens, the brain develops in the same way across all cultures in the world, all cultures. So, all righty. Okay, I think we're done. Thank you so much for coming to this session. And I'm gonna hang around the conference, so maybe I'll see you later. If you have any questions, feel free to, you can email me. Is my email on here? It's not. But my email, find me all over the internet. I have a blog at unschoolinguniversity.com. My email is on there. I have a blog on parenting, which is separate because that's what I've taught for 25 years at judyarnall.com. I have a Facebook page, and I have a group. Join the Unschooling STEM Facebook group if you're interested in learning more about how we, our kids learn STEM topics through self-directed education. My books are all over, Chapters, Barnes and Noble, you name it. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram. So thank you very much. It was great to see you all. Bye. Have a great rest of the conference.
Thank you very much.
Now, I don't think I want to stop that for the next person. Okay. Okay, bye. I think I gotta leave here then. Do I end meeting? Yes. Okay, I think I end meeting. Okay. Okay.